Hi, it's Jonathan from Platinum Property Partners. I'm today going to show you a little bit about financial manipulation. We're going to look at taking the same house with the same builders, the same refurbishments, the same tenants paying the same rent and the same costs, but actually directly being able to influence how that asset performs due to the circumstances that you might want to dictate. So let's have a look at a scenario, shall we? So we've got this house, it's the same house, 300 grand to buy, 70 odd grand worth of refurbishment, and the same 6 tenants paying £550 per month. Okay, you can look at 4 different scenarios and 3 different outputs from each one. Okay, so the first one's gross profit. So these are the figures on the screen. I guess most people will be naturally drawn towards option B. So Barry, he's got the highest level of gross profit from those assets. Danny on the right hand side there, much lower. But don't forget, these are the same houses with the same tenants paying the same rent. Okay, so what else is going on here behind the scenes? We're going to look at then return on equity. So how hard is the money working that's tied up in each of these properties? And you can now see there's a very different scenario as well. Danny's got a phenomenal 43 and a bit % return. Barry much lower at 13.2, and the other two sort of hovering somewhere in the middle. Okay, so the last bit of the jigsaw is how much cash has each house got tied up. And again, there's a range here. So 110 on the right hand side, 165 down to 31 right hand side. Okay, so key bit here is these are the same, as I say, same houses with the same tenants and the same cost overheads. So what's going on here? And this is all about the capital structure that sits behind these assets and the way that they are financed. Okay, so the first one, taking Amir, he's taken a normal. He's bought the asset with a mortgage, he's refinanced, refurbished the property, then he's put it on an interest-only long-term mortgage as well. Okay, so he incurs financing costs during that refurbishment, but he saves the massive amount of working capital of buying the house outright for cash. Okay, so that is a pretty standard approach that most people take. Alternatively, the next scenario is Barry. He's managed to have a lower loan to value once the work is all done. Okay, so he's taken a mortgage out to buy the house, but then when the work has been redone, instead of an 80% loan to value, he's taken a 65% loan to value. He's tied up more cash. You can see the difference between Amir and Barry. He's tied up about 55 grand more. But because he's paying out less on a mortgage, he's actually earning more income for the same house. Okay, so that's really important. For instance, if people are leaving corporate life, they've got deep pockets, they want to build up a big portfolio, but they're really keen on driving income. And you may wish to take a lower level of mortgage to force that gross profitability level up. Okay, the next one along, Chloe, she's got the same operating profit as Amir, but a higher return on equity, okay, and less funds invested. And what she's managed to do is she bought the house outright for cash. Okay, so she didn't incur any of the financing costs during the refurbishment phase. That means there's less money tied up. That means that the money that is tied up is working harder because the obviously ongoing costs are the same as the first scenario, but with less capital deployed, each pound that's in there is working that bit harder. Okay, so it's a very effective and efficient model, but you do need quite deep pockets to be able to buy a house outright for cash to start with. Okay, it is an option for some people and is always worth considering because this has a very high return on equity for a very good ongoing income stream as well. The fourth option is utilising what's called passive investment. So using somebody else as a third party, friends, family, somebody else that you might network with, using, in this instance, about £80,000. So paying them a level of income, and they're going to need a level of interest on that investment that they've given you. But accordingly, you've got far less capital tied up. You pay more out in terms of interest, but your money that you've got invested works much harder as well. Okay, so your money works really hard. You also need to work really hard too. This can be a fantastic option for people looking to further and expand their portfolio and utilising less of their own cash and spreading that a little bit further as well. We do generally advise that people need to be able to prove the model before they become an investable proposition, but it is a very useful tool for a significant number of people out there as well. Yeah, I thought this was just quite interesting because there's no right way about doing this. So we've got people that do all of these various different scenarios. In fact, even within the same portfolio, it depends on what's right at the time. But I guess the takeaway from all this is when you see gross profitability, returns on equity, all of that sort of stuff, it can be directly manipulated depending on what you want this to do. Okay, and we will help you with understanding what's the right scenario for yourself, and you can then pick and choose accordingly, depending on whether you want your money to work really hard, whether you want a high level of income, or perhaps somewhere balanced in between. Hope that was useful.